young girl named Elva Skinner. And she was, depending on the source you look at, she was either 5 years old or almost 5 when this happened. And Elva was getting ready one morning on a cold winter morning and was said to have stood maybe a little too close to the fireplace, and it caught her dress on fire. And the fire quickly spread throughout the rest of the room, and Elva was burned and eventually died before anybody could get to her to help her.
It's a horrible way to go.
It's a tragic story. Now, EVPs have been recorded in Ashmore Estates with the voice of a young girl crying out for help and looking for her mama. Now, investigators automatically attribute these to Elva. Now, these voices are usually captured around the second and third floors of Ashmore Estates. Now, a lot of people will dismiss this idea that it's actually the spirit of Elva Skinner because they say, why would this spirit haunt a location where she actually never lived? But it's not the building, it's the location.
Right.
And, you know, the building that's Ashmore Estates is on the same site as what was the original Coles County Poor Farm.
Right.
You know, so it's one of those things where we talk about when you renovate an old property and you'll find that activity increases.
Oh yeah.
It's not so much that there's something about the building in those situations, although, you know, the buildings do hold some history. But the location is what is key, and the spirits don't know the difference. You know, again, you know, we've talked about this briefly, and I've actually seen this diagrammed where it'll show, you know, an original floor plan of a house that was torn down and somebody possibly died in it. And then you've got the floor plan of a new house, and then it'll show like a path of somebody who's experiencing a haunting there. And they're like, well, they'll see this figure, you know, walk from this point through a wall, you know, and go into this, and, you know, But if you look at the original floor plan, you know, it follows a path that would have been consistent with the original house that was there.
Right. It hasn't changed for them.
Yeah. Something along those lines. Right. You know, they may not even be experiencing what's going on in this time.
Right.
You know, you may just be seeing, you know, that replay, that stone tape, you know, the thing over and over and over that just, you know, it's trapped, and you're just there to witness it. And it has nothing to do with the fact that you're on the second floor or the third floor necessarily. So again, you have to believe in all this stuff to believe that. But, you know, if you're really into this and you buy into this idea, then the fact that it's not the original building doesn't really matter. Now, there's very little documented about Elva Skinner's short life, but the records show that she did indeed live and die in a fire at the Coles County Poor Farm. So there's evidence that she was a real person. This is not a
completely
not a fictional character.
Yeah.
And Michael Klein's book is, you know, the stories are categorized as historical fiction. So it's kind of like the movie Titanic. We're gonna put a fictitious story around actual historical events.
Right.
So
take a small bit of history and then embellish.
Yeah. I mean, why not?
Yeah, it makes for a better story.
It does. But, you know, another spirit that's well known to Ashmore Estates is that of another gentleman that lived and died there. And his name was Joe Bloxam. Now, Joe was a gentleman who...
That just makes me think of Flotsam and Jetsam.
Yeah, it does. Bloxam.
Bloxam and Jetsam.
Flotsam and Jetsam and Bloxam. Okay, I get it. But anyway, Joe was a man. He fell on hard times, and he was forced to move into the poor farm in 1906 or become an inmate.
Uh-oh.
Hate that.
Yeah.
But at the time when he moved in, he was 61 years old. And he kind of found his place assisting the superintendent with maintaining the grounds and doing odd jobs around the property. And he lived there for 15 years.
Oh, wow.
So this was his home.
Yeah.
You know, this wasn't just a stopping point on the way to another point of his life. This was his home.
Yeah.
15 years, yeah. Now, when he was 76, Joe took a trip to Charleston when a motorist passed him limping down the road. The motorist picked him up and helped him get home, but along the way learned that Joe had been struck by a train. Not head on, obviously.
Yeah.
But maybe just clipped. Like
Nicked
maybe
him.
he was trying to beat the train, you know, get across the tracks or something, or maybe he was trying to jump on the train and missed. And, you know, anyway, it was a bad deal for Joe.
Sure.
And his, you know, his body, it was overwhelmed. I mean, this was a trauma that he just couldn't overcome. Now the motorist got him back to the home, and he was immediately taken downstairs to the boiler room, which is where he spent most of his time. So there's an assumption that he had a bed down there, you know, that you know, he was helping the superintendent. So, you know, maybe he kept an eye on things in the basement. Or maybe they thought that the warmth in the boiler room would kind of help with shock, you know, things like that. Because, you know.
Or they just said, get him away from us. We don't want to deal with it. Put him in the boiler room.
Maybe. But, you know, I did a WebMD search, and when I WebMD search what to do if you get hit by a train, get to a boiler room was not a treatment option.
Right.
So I don't know. Maybe they were thinking, you know, that at this time, that's the first thing we do is we take them to the boiler room.
Yeah. That just makes me think that I don't think people realize what weird paths our research takes us on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not just a straightforward path of researching this stuff. We'll find a little nugget, and then we'll end up somewhere else on the interwebs that we never thought we would end up on. So
look, it ain't nothing for, you know, Adam or myself to get a text from the other one and be like, "Hey, did you know?" Like, no, where did you? Why?
Yeah.
You know,
I've been doing this for the past 30 minutes.
They mentioned this, which caused me to search for that, and then that mentioned this, which I Googled, and oh my God.
Right.
Are we going to use this in the show? No, it has nothing to do with what we're looking at.
Yeah. We can't use that in the show, but, you know.
Hell, throw me a rope. I've fallen down this rabbit hole.
Exactly. All right, Matt. So let's take a second and talk about this week's sponsor, AMC Shudder. Now, AMC Network Shudder is a premium streaming video service, super serving members with the best selection in genre entertainment, covering horror, thrillers, and the supernatural. Shudder's expanding library of film, TV series, and originals is available on most streaming services in the US, Canada, the UK, Ireland, and Germany. And they have a new exclusive series, The Deadlands, which is now streaming, and it features a slain Maori warrior, and this ties into our live show when we were talking about the Maori. It has a slain Maori warrior, Waka Nuku Rao, who's sent back to the world of the living to redeem his sins. But the world Waka returns to is ravaged by a breach between that of the living and that of the dead. As the spirits of the newly deceased now stalk the lands and hunt its inhabitants, follow Waka and his companion Mihi as they work to close the rift and restore balance. The series presents elements of action, adventure, and the supernatural, and was produced with a special focus on the heritage of the indigenous Maori tribe of New Zealand. Catch new episodes streaming every Thursday.
And you'll have unlimited access to stream ad-free on all your favorite devices: iPhone, Android, iPad, Apple TV, Xbox One, Amazon Fire TV, and so many more. For just $5.99 a month or $56.99 a year, you can stream great thrillers, horror, and the supernatural. Shudder has the largest fastest growing human curated selection of thrilling and dangerous entertainment. It truly is the Netflix for horror. And Amanda and I, we thoroughly enjoy our Shudder subscription.
Yeah.
And we've mentioned before the show Discovery of Witches.
Great show.
Which was one of our favorite books. It's a fantastic show. It's well written, an unbelievable storyline, and we can't wait until the next season comes out. So go and check that out along with all of your other horror favorites and some you may not have ever heard of.
Mm-hmm.
So go check it out.
And you can try Shudder for free for 30 days. All you got to do is go to shudder.com and use the promo code GRAVE. So that's SHUDDER.com and use the promo code GRAVE.
That's right. Graveyard Tales listeners can try Shudder free for 30 days. Just go to shudder.com. That's SHUDDER.com and enter the promo code GRAVE. GRAVE. But poor old Joe, he didn't make it. And he died right there in the boiler room. And he's reportedly buried in that small burial plot on the premises of what is now Ashmore Estates. Now, investigators believe that Joe not only never left that boiler room, he doesn't take very kindly to people poking around down in there. Now, a man named Leslie Michael of the Illinois Metaphysical and Paranormal Society was quoted as saying, "Even if you're not seeing anything or actively hearing anything, you feel like you're not alone." And he's referring to the boiler room at Ashmore Estate.
Mm-hmm.
So, that right there, is everybody has felt that.
Oh, sure.
Especially if we're talking about being in a basement, and just kind of getting that feeling that there's something standing behind me and I'm not going to turn around and look.
Yeah.
Because if I turn around and look, it's going to scare me. So I'm just going to stand here and be scared.
Yeah. And we've talked before. I think we've talked on the show before. I forget what we actually talk about on air versus not on air. But, I feel like the way that spirits communicate to us the most is through feelings rather than something physical, moving something, letting you see it or whatever. The most common communication is through a feeling. That's why it's a personal experience and you can't validate it.
Yeah, exactly. And see that, and I'm glad you said that, because so many people that are skeptics or just flat out cynics, their expectation is that somebody at some point is going to produce rock solid evidence of, ghosts or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's ever going to happen.
No, me either.
Because Adam is exactly right. That weird feeling you get, that something's behind you or that you're not alone or the hairs standing up on your arm, all of that stuff, you can't quantify that.
Mm-hmm.
You either feel it or you don't. And because of that, so many people are always going to be right there to say it's your imagination. It's a cold breeze. It's an anomaly of light coming through a window at a certain time of day, and there's a crack in the window or whatever.
Low frequency sound waves making your brain see stuff.
So, there are going to be people that are never, ever going to be convinced of this. And Adam and I are not the two that are going to try to convince anybody. We're just trying to put out the information and let you be the judge. I mean, that's the whole point. If you believe it, fine. If you don't believe it, that's fine too.
Yeah.
But a lot of investigators have spent time in this boiler room because it is so active. And people claim that they have been touched, scratched, or even grabbed by an invisible hand while exploring the boiler room. electronic equipment routinely malfunctions in there, and some report having had objects like light bulbs thrown at them. And there was one particular case where a local TV host named Mark Rivera visited Ashmore Estates to film a Halloween special. Now, while they were down in the boiler room, he was talking to Leslie Michael, who I mentioned before, and his cameraman, Steve the cameraman,
I know him,
decided to wander into the next room. Never a good idea.
No.
We're down here in what is supposed to be a haunted boiler room, and Steve just decides, wonder what's in here.
Well, it's like Blink-182 said, stay together for the kids. Or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. My mom, stay with your group.
Yep, exactly.
Stay with your group. We have, if you've learned nothing else from this show, you've learned to stay with your group. And
have a buddy.
Don't be the last in line.
Right. Or the first.
Yeah. I mean, just get in the middle and enjoy.
Ride it out.
But the camera footage that Steve's camera managed to capture pans across an old table with dirty wires and cables and light bulbs. Now, as it passes, you can hear a clank and some swearing. Now, Steve said the light bulb flew off the table and hit him in the neck.
Oh, wow.
So Joe's got pretty good aim, and I don't know if the swearing came from Joe or Steve when he got hit by a light bulb. I would imagine it was Steve.
Probably.
Because that would have been me too. But Michael Leslie reports that this is not an unusual occurrence in the boiler room, and that Joe really seems angry most of the time. He also says that sometimes growling can be heard from the shadows, which they're not really sure is Joe. They think it could be something else.
Jeez.
Usually growling from the shadows, if you don't own a dog, is not a good sign.
No, that's not a good thing.
Makes me think of Bobby Mackey's.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of growling goes on down in that basement, and it's not good.
Right,
so,
and it's usually a human spirit, what you would consider a human spirit, doesn't growl at you.
Right.
They talk to you or scream at you, but they don't growl.
Tell you to leave.
Yeah.
Tell you to get out.
Get out.
Get out is a common thing that's heard at Ashmore Estates. There are a lot of audible voices. There are a lot of EVPs as well, but there's a lot of audible voices that people pick up. You know, and whether it's somebody being told to get out or somebody answering a question, things like there's a lot more of that than we usually see in haunted places.
I need water. Where's my sweet tea?
I hate trains.
Yeah.
But beyond those two spirits that are named, there are shadow figures at Ashmore Estates. Now,
we've got history with them.
We do, and these are very common, but they're always referred to, at least in the research that I did, as shadow figures, not necessarily shadow people, but it seems that they act the same. So I'm thinking they're using the term synonymously.
Oh, probably.
But Adam and I have talked about shadow people, and shadow people are not spirits of past humans. They are something totally different.
Yeah.
And have their own unique abilities.
An enigma all their own.
Yeah. So, but apparently Ashmore is full of them. So, there's a caretaker and tour guide there named Hannah who says that moving shadows are very frequent and reports that she personally has witnessed shadows walk across the room, walk toward her, and even walk right into her, which she says is not very pleasant. I can only imagine.
Oh, yeah. That's no thanks.
But shadow figures have also been seen in the boiler room, often described as moving shadows that seem to peek out from behind objects or from around door facing. Now, in the upstairs rooms, Hannah describes seeing a shadow figure that she suspected to be a little girl. She didn't know, so apparently it was a shorter one. But like we said, that I wouldn't necessarily tie that into Elvis Skinner, because ghosts and shadow people, two different things.
Right.
Now, actually, Nick Groff of Ghost Adventures and Paranormal Lockdown, he felt like one of these shadow figures targeted him. Now, during an investigation, one of the cameramen noticed a black mass creep out of one of the rooms and then go back in. And what did he do? He told Nick that he should go in there and check it out. Hey.
Yeah, I just saw some really scary junk. Go in there.
So maybe you should go and check it out.
Yeah, I'll film from the hallway.
He's like Fred from Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, right.
There's the demon went that way. Scoob and Shaggy, go check it out.
Yeah, right.
Wait, what are you?
Why me?
Maybe he offered Nick a Scooby snack. But he told Nick to go check it out, and an EVP on Nick's recorder, taken just after he entered the room, contains a very angry voice. Kids, plug your ears. It says, "Get out, God." You can go listen to this, and I'll let you be the judge if that's really what it says.
Yeah, if that's what you think.
Right. But Nick took a small group into the room and decided he was going to try to communicate with whatever entity was in there. Although it couldn't be audibly heard, a voice recorded EVP can be heard after Nick asks if anyone followed him in there, saying, "I will follow you." And again, if I didn't have the words at the bottom of the screen, I don't necessarily think that's what I would have heard. I don't think I would have heard anything else either. I think I would have just heard a lot of
Yeah, right.
But it's Ghost Adventures. So
yeah,
take it with a grain of salt. But the story was a big enough story, that it was actually included in the book about haunted hospitals and insane asylums and things like that. So they actually included that story in there. The third floor also seems like it's an active area for shadow figures, where many people describe this heaviness, almost like an elephant sitting on your chest, which I'm like, that would be really heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just like, something less heavy, but heavy being on your chest.
Right.
And an elephant would feel really, really bad.
Elephant would kill you.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, okay, I myself have felt that. I have gone into places where it just feels like there's almost like a sorrow.
Right. Yeah.
Just
exactly.
It's like you that feeling of being, just hot and bogged down. It's the middle of the summer, you're outside, you're working, and you just get this feeling that just something heavy is laying on you. That's the kind of feeling that I got when this happened to me. And it's not pleasant.
No, it's very draining.
It really sounds like, this is what people experience when they visit the third floor at Ashmore Estates. Now, in an interview with Robin Terry, who is the current owner of Ashmore Estates, he was asked to describe what his first paranormal experience was like when he first started working on the building. Now, Robin says that in May of 2014, he was working on the third floor when he was overcome with this feeling that he needed to leave. Now, Robin claims that he isn't very sensitive to these things, but this time he began to feel very emotional about something in the house wanting him to go. At the time, Robin says he was no stranger to investigations, stating that he had been involved in over 250 investigations prior to this event. So he knew what was going on.
Right.
You know, he'd seen a lot of stuff.
Wasn't his first rodeo.
That's exactly right. So he said as the feelings got stronger, he decided to leave, and he called his wife. And he said this was around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So for him to be just calling it a day at 2:30 was very unusual. And so his wife was confused and asked him, why in the world would you leave right in the middle of the day? And Robin said, something in the house definitely doesn't want me there today.
Right. And you saying that it happened May of 2014, I just, to give people kind of a idea, they bought the Ashmore Estates May 3rd of 2014. Robin and Norma Terry. So this was like almost instantaneously that after they bought it. Right. It was saying, nope, you're invading my space and I want you out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, new owner, new people making changes.
Yep.
So, I mean, all of that.
That state of transition we've talked about.
Exactly. Now, other sightings at Ashmore Estates include an apparition of a man jumping from an upstairs window to his quote-unquote death, and another figure of a man that's wearing a dressy top hat who roams around the hallways. And from the research I did, these are full-scale apparitions.
Right.
I mean, these are not, what is that, or a shadow or anything. These are full-on, I can see, I can make out details, things like that. Music is another common thing at Ashmore Estates. Music can be heard all throughout the building, along with singing coming from the empty music room. Now, Robin moved a piano in for the haunted house. Now, I don't think we mentioned this. They actually turned the building into like a commercial haunted house.
Right.
Like for people to come and visit, take the tour, get scared to death, all this kind of stuff. They did this. And for that purpose, Robin moved a piano in there, and it's still there.
And it had actually been turned into a haunted house by a previous owner
right.
in 2006, October 13th, 2006. They opened the first haunted house at Ashmore Estates. So the Terrys just kind of are keeping it going, which I think is kind of cool,
Yeah, it's super cool. And, I mean, I can remember in Nashville when they turned the old Donaldson Hospital, which was empty, into a haunted house, Yeah.
That's freaky.
It's pretty cool. I never went to it. I'm not scared to go through a haunted house. I just, if I'm gonna drop $35 to go through something, I really, honestly, I have a better way to spend my money. But if that's
right.
if that's your gig, man, full on. I mean, we have got some insane haunted houses here in Nashville. This is a total aside. If you're ever going to be around Nashville in Halloween, we have got some crazy ones. I know the last couple of years we had one where you had to sign a waiver.
Yep.
Because they were going to touch you.
Yeah.
It's like you can go to the left and everybody will leave you alone. If you go to the right, sign this, that you're not going to punch anybody or sue us for anything that happens to you, because they're going to touch you and grab you and all kinds of stuff. You will get grabbed,
yeah. I'm like, I wouldn't do that.
I don't think I could, because my instinct would be to fight back.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
I mean, even if I'm in there with the mindset of this is all for fun, this is all make believe. If I'm startled to the point that somebody came up behind me in the dark and grabbed me, my reflex is going to take over to push them away.
Yeah, you're going to get your nose broke, and I'll get sued.
Yeah, I'm not going through that one or the other one, as a matter of fact. But back to this piano. Hannah, the tour guide, she gives an account of giving a tour and hearing the piano playing downstairs. Now, Hannah asked her group to stay where they were while she went down to see if any tour stragglers had discovered the piano. When she arrived, she saw what she said was something standing in front of the piano. A few more notes clinked out, and the thing disappeared.
That's wild.
So, shadow figures can play the piano. We didn't know that, but
they're very artistic.
Apparently, one there can.
And he's the shadow figure of Johann Sebastian Bach.
That's better than the shadow figure of John Philip Sousa. Can you imagine?
I agree. You know, I take a little bit of offense to that because I played the tuba in high school. So I'm slightly offended. Triggered, Matt. Triggered.
Look, I don't want you marching up and down the hallway playing the tuba if I'm trying to sleep. So
I don't want me doing that either. So
no offense to tuba players, you know, keep it during the daylight hour. But this is a cool story. I found this story, and I think we're gonna wrap up with this story. Local television weather personality Kevin Orpert stayed in the house overnight in 2009. Now, he reported several incidents in the basement area where it felt as if something was trying to lift him off the ground. He says around 4 a.m., while the group he was with went up to the second floor to investigate, Orpert stayed on the first floor. He has no recollection